Hey, Tom.
Did not realize my camera was not on.
Hey, Scott. You've got a nice new.
Sorry, let me,
Kind
there we go.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. My sound system has been all broken today, and I had to do a whole thing with my audio. My microphone was doing terrible things to recordings, so that was really fun finding that out. So I've got a couple of episodes that are a little suspect.
Ouch. Ouch. That's frustrating. Hey,
So
Tom. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Jean-Georges.
yeah, and I think a couple other people were planning on joining as well, but I think I just decided I JGP and I were trying to figure out exact timing, and we just were like, you know what, let's just get something going and just start to try and do these more often. And just, we tried to do these very early in the data mesh community days. But like I think the big issue was that people weren't ready to talk. And I think there are still a lot of people who are hesitant to talk. And so I think getting to a space where we're just having more conversations more often is going to be the thing. And I think JGP will either throw it, if I create a data mesh understanding YouTube, we'll throw it on there, or you can throw it on your YouTube stuff, like whatever. But I mean, if you want me to give an introduction to myself, that I can, but I think it'd be helpful, Tom, to understand kind of who you are as we're kind of going into the conversation.
Yeah, I saw the invite very last minute, but
literally, I posted it 2 hours ago. So yes.
Yeah, but I thought, why not? So I'm Tom de Wolf. I'm from Belgium, and hosting also the data mesh meetups over there. Did the first one in March, I think, and second one in September 18th. I'm a software engineer architect as background, already 15 years in IT with ACA Group, a consulting firm. And the last years did a deep dive into data mesh and got quite passionate about it because my previous experience using domain-driven design and team topologies and all those things that come back into the data mesh area can be applied to data. Yeah, we're doing a few data mesh projects also and doing some platform building in there. So that's a bit my background.
Cool.
Awesome. And are you aware of who JGP is? JGP, it might be helpful to give some background on you. And I'll give mine to anybody who's doing the recording, but I think you all are more the implementers, so you're more important.
I don't know if I'm important or not. Well, anyway, Tom, it's nice to meet you. The funny thing about that is that Paul is joining as well. The funny thing about that is you're in Belgium. I'm French, living in the US, but I'm American too now. Scott is in the Netherlands, is American. So you see, it's who cares really? So, yeah. So Jean-Georges or JG, well, being Belgian, to pronounce my name correctly. I like to define myself as a technologist or a consultant. I've one of the 30 lifetime IBM champions. I built a lot of data platforms in my life, but the latest one is a data mesh at PayPal. I was there for until recently, I wrote a book. I've wrote a few books on Spark, and now the data mesh book is for kids as well. And I like to contribute to this community that Scott started, and I'm happy to exchange, share knowledge, and share ideas and grow from there. Right? So yeah, and I live in upstate New York, so it's my lunchtime now. I'm sorry for you. It's your juniper time, Scott.
Yeah. Well, and Paul's. Well, I don't actually know how close upstate New York is. Well, I guess it all gets a little confusing. Versus, Paul, you're in Massachusetts, right? You're still on mute, Paul, by the way, if you wanted to.
Yes, I'm in Massachusetts. down by the Cape. So a few hours away, several hours away.
Yeah, it's really, so I live like 5 minutes from Pittsfield, which is the first city in Massachusetts here. So I go shopping in Massachusetts, and not only for sales tax reasons.
Yeah, I live on the other end. I live down by the Cape. So.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and Paul just did his episode the other day. So it's good to kind of have you on, Paul. If you don't mind, if giving people a little bit of background on yourself, and then we can kind of just. I was thinking this session would just be about talking a little bit about what people are doing thus far with their platforms and kind of learning what advice, but also just kind of like digging into a couple of different things there. But Paul, if you don't mind giving people a bit of background on yourself.
Yeah. So I'm Paul Kavakis. I work at Ocean Spray. So I've been working there for a very long time, like 20 plus years now. Myself, I've been in development, software development, my entire life, my entire career, all the way back to when I was little. So about 5 years ago, I started to go more into the data side of at Ocean Spray instead of building custom apps. So previously I was building all kinds of apps, JavaScript, everything else, whatever, all different apps. About 5 years ago, I moved into data, started managing the data team. So I managed the data team at Ocean Spray. And over the past couple of months, we've been starting to look at and investigate data mesh and started to build out some of the initial pieces. So it's very early on, but started to build out some of the initial pieces around what our data mesh is going to look like.
Yeah, and we like, I mean, I know you're early, but and I'm excited for your episode to come out because so much of it was like, hey, people are going to be kind of jealous of how accepting people have been thus far, and kind of the slow roll of moving over to having
we picked a couple of like people that I knew were specific teams and users that were very forward looking, forward focused, so that they were much easier to work with. As we move to others, it'll be more difficult, but the first couple of people that we're working with are very much on board with kind of owning data, owning the responsibility of that. So we'll see when we actually implement it, if they truly are, but so far they've been great.
I wonder if that's so I mean, I see a lot of people coming over on the especially the platform side, but just in general to data from the software side. I wonder if it's a pattern that people should look to of do an internal hire and be like, okay, you know the lay of the land on the software side, you know all the people who are going to be like, it's almost one of those things of like, who's going to be willing to do this stuff? Yeah. So, I mean, JGP, you've been, you built out a big platform. One thing that I was has been coming up in a lot of these conversations that I've been trying to figure out is like, what's the important and when? And it's different for every organization, but what did you think was going to be important that ended up not being important, right? Or what did you think was going to be, oh, we can do that later. And then it was like, oh no, this is the thing that actually is like much more of the platform than we thought.
We first built a lot of the tooling for the data scientists. So because our data mesh was supposed to be going more towards data science users, and for that reason, I think we said, okay, well, the tooling we're going to focus on is going to be to simplify their life, like discovery, Python interface, so you could directly consume data from the mesh in Python in your notebook. So I think that was that, and I think it's great. Okay, we delivered, they used it, but I think we put the data engineering tools we wanted to do in the self-service capabilities of building your own data product a little bit on the back burner, and maybe we should have done that before in terms of technology. So
when you say self-service, is that for producer or consumer, or yes?
Well, it's more like for the owner, right? So for the data product owner, okay, and the data product owner's team, which is probably a bunch of data engineers, or is interacting with them. Okay, so we rely on a data contract, and this data contract is very key, but also a little bit constraining. And I think we might have scared a little bit our data engineers with the data contract, but it's not that difficult, but it's a change. Okay, so, and we built tooling for the data contract, but maybe we built it too late. I don't know. That's probably something I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing that rigidity in data contracts and people hearing the word contract and going, okay, I can't break this. And that's why, like, it's like, you know, I wish we weren't using the phrase contract, but it's the best phrase. So
I was, you know, like Jean-Marc said, the federated computational governance. I was thinking that the data contract should be something like a computational brochure about that, because it's, you know, it's like when you go to when you used to go to a car dealership, okay, and you want to buy this Toyota Camry, and then they give you this very nice glossy brochure thing, and then you go back home and you kind of look at the car, all the configuration, and you know, that's pre-web, okay. So and still you can probably still do it in some cases, but you've got this brochure. It's a summary of what you want and what you're getting. Contract means like, oh, I'm going to be bound to something. It's super rigid, it's super complex. But the thing is, it's not, right? It's better than having nothing, which is probably 95% of the data engineering cases right now. So
yeah, you know, I had a really early conversation on it, and people being like, well, it's a contract and therefore it can never be broken. And it's like, well, no, but then is it just a sharing agreement? And you're like, oh, that's just a pinky promise between, you know, between kids. And so it's just like, but yeah, Tom, what are you seeing? Because you're more, you know, kind of doing consulting stuff, right? Like I when I looked into your background, that's kind of what you're focused on, right? So I wanted to understand how clients are starting to ask these questions, or, you know, not getting any specific into any one client, but like, how are the conversations going, and how are people understanding what they have to build? Because that's been a big challenge, I think, is what do I actually do here? Great, I want to do this, but what do I do?
Well, mostly the last months we're seeing that a lot of prospects are at least thinking about data mesh or having it on their roadmap. So that was not a surprise, but nice to see. And it's mainly because a lot of them have the problems. A lot of data sources that have to come in, a lot of use cases that have to be served. One technology doesn't fit all those situations. So they're searching for flexibility, searching for making things more decentralized, and so that all adds up. And what I then see is that there is a lot of data tech around, but a data engineer once told me that we often forget how complex the tools are that we use, and so to enable in the theory every team to share data or consume data, I think the typical data warehouse technology or lake technology alone is not enough, and you have to have the extra abstraction layer above it that forms the data product as really an architectural component. And from a technical point of view, that's the thing we're focusing on, to really engineer that, build that abstraction, build that life cycle, and build that for the data product developer's experience, that he can really register it, that everything is provisioned in the different technologies he wants to use, and so on. So that's mainly what we're trying to do from a technical point. name a few tech, we're mainly using Kubernetes as a control plane to engineer those things. On the other side, I think it's important to also start discovering and identifying the data products or the potential data products in an organization, because that making such a data product landscape, even if it's not yet built, can trigger ideas, inspire people, and also provide an insight in what the business value will be of the data mesh effort. So it's working on both those things at the same time that we're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, Zhamak has talked about this, that her wish and kind of my wish as well is like, I wish the phrase data fabric didn't mean what it meant, because like when I think about a fabric, I think about like a PCB layer and the printed circuit board layer, and on the hardware side of like, you look at how chips are able to just be, semiconductors are able to just be put on this PCB, and they all can just automatically start connecting to each other, right? And sometimes you have to do custom PCB design and all that stuff. So it's not a perfect analogy, but what we have to do in data is do pin-to-pin compatibility, and you're soldering each pin to the thing. And so it's instead of this abstraction layer of, and Zhamak's talked about that abstraction layer too, of the challenge of everybody having to understand how the tool works instead of what the tool allows you to do, and how frustrating that is for the data product developer or whoever, and that generalist software people can never do data products if the landscape stays as it is, simply because it ends up being that they have to learn all of the tools. And, if you've got 3 different data products that you're working on, maybe you're in a team of 5 people that are kind of working on multiple different data products, and each one has, a set of 3 crucial tools. Well, if there's no overlap between them, then you have to become an expert in 9 tools. And are you seeing that, like, that you're able to abstract that away, or are you seeing that it's still super difficult because even the tools itself are so tied in the way that they do absolutely everything, that it's crucial that you have to understand the tool to even be able to create the abstraction that still is underlying to the tool? Or are you seeing that like people aren't understanding what the tool actually does? Like, how important are you seeing that?
Sorry,
it's a confusing question because I'm not sure exactly what to ask.
Multiple questions or multiple things to dive into that question, but
it's a Scott thing.
First thing, sorry.
That's a Scott thing. He starts like that. It's like it sounds like an innocent question, okay. And then you've got 3 hours to answer.
Yeah,
that's okay. That will be enough. No, I'm for example, generic software developers that want to also share data. I think it's about making a platform that at least provides the options to do it simple, and the option next to it to do it with more complex and advanced tech. So, for example, a very simple data product setup could be just write a script in Python or in another language that and that a software engineer can use, like he writes or she writes other programming scripts that take data from inputs and put it in their outputs, and that's something that at least is present in the data mesh platform for having an option that a software engineer can use without learning all the data engineering tools. But of course, that option will not be enough for big data and other situations. So next to that, when a use case comes along that needs more, then go use the existing data warehouse or other, more pipeline technologies to do the transformations, and also plug that in as a choice in your data platform. And that's how I look at it, to make it accessible to at least a generic developer, that there's the option to do it like they program other things. It might not be the best data engineering best practices then, but it at least is an option to share the data and make it accessible in the data mesh.
So you want kind of quick access to the data.
Yeah, so the data mesh without an ability to share data from the teams that have the data will be difficult, because if there's no data, you cannot connect it. And that has to be as simple as possible. So, and if you do that in the tools that they already use or know, that's at least an option.
Are you finding that? So one thing that has been an interesting thing that's come up in a couple of different conversations is that teams were not able to really process their data very well, right? Even if they thought that they knew their data, they weren't able to really get at their data well. And that if you go in there with data mesh, then you are like, hey, you can now deal with your own data, with your own domain's data, not producing it for anybody else, that they start to lean in on that. Or, I mean, JGP, did you start to see that too? Or like once you started to focus on that? But, you know, Tom, I'd love to hear kind of what you're doing. And then Paul, I've got a question that kind of came up for me after that, but.
Okay.
Yeah, just adding on that. If you own the applications that have the data, and you have a tool that allows you to easily share it in the places where the analytics use cases start from, then I at least think it's easier to expose that data, because it's your own span of control where you're in. And in the other situation, yeah, it's more I'm an owner of this application. Oh, and something external of me needs that data. Oh, now I have to develop a whole API for that. And but because direct database access, no, I don't want that from an architectural point of view, to tie everything together. But if it's in your own span of control, the application and the data product, then that's not such a big problem to have direct database access, because you change it as a whole.
But what I've heard is that even in some of these domains, that even though that they have that direct access, or that having a platform that allows them to do transformations much easier just gets them to go, you know what? Okay, you're providing me tools that are actually helpful for my own domain, even if I weren't sharing this with anybody else. If I were just creating a data silo inside my own thing, that I've heard that from a couple of people, but it's not something that's come through in every single thing. So I don't know if it's a good selling point.
Then at least it's made visible that that data product is available, that it's in the data catalog and it's visible for more than only your silo. So even if your intention was to only use it to have the data in a data product for your own domain, yeah, the data catalog will make it visible to the rest of the organization, and they can start using it. Of course, depending on the data access rules, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of come up a couple of different times. But yeah, JGP, I'd love to hear kind of, and I don't want to be the one hogging all the questions. I just always have all the questions.
No, it's a conversation. I think so. So I something you said, Tom. We did not, and now my philosophy is a little bit along this way. I don't want to simplify the transformation process for now. I'm not interested in that. This is because, especially at, and before PayPal, I wore many hats, and it looks like every data engineering team has its own set of tools. And when you've got M&A, merger and acquisition, and then people coming and things and trends like, oh, everybody's going to use Talent. Oh no, Talent is commercial, so let's all go use DBT and things like that. So I'm a little bit I'm more for saying that, hey, let's, because of the cognitive load as well. Okay, so you're going to the data engineers and you say, hey, now you're going to build data products, and you're telling them, hey guys, you're going to change the way you're thinking. You're going to deal with a data product owner. You've got to do data contracts. So I was more into the idea that we should not influence how they transform the data. Okay, that's their secret sauce. That's their knowledge. So if they want to use Spark, if they want to use DBT, if they want to use Databricks, whatever, okay, just use whatever you want. But I'm interested in the outcome of it. Okay, so you're doing a transformation, but your outcome should match my SLAs, should match my data quality, should match what is basically in my data contract.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead, Paul.
I'm just going to add to that. I'm actually kind of in the same boat as JGP, that the kind of design and philosophy that I'm having is you can transform it however you want. Now, I also manage that team that's actually doing most of that work, so I know what they're doing anyways, but like let the team do the transformation however they want. And then what I'm planning on doing with our data mesh and we've started to implement is like I can standardize things. So we use Airflow as kind of the scheduler. So you want to do 5 transformation steps in your data product. The mesh can control that, but all that the mesh is doing is really just triggering a DAG in Airflow. The DAG can do whatever it wants. It can call in Azure Data Factory. It can do Spark. Whatever whatever. But so then the mesh still is able to know about and know when things are transformed, so it can do events and everything else to let people know that data is refreshed and there's new data available and all that. But the actual transformations are irrelevant. Obviously, they're not irrelevant, but they're irrelevant from the mesh standpoint, in my eyes.
Yeah. Well, and JGP, one thing you said in there, I kind of strongly agree with and strongly disagree with, which is I don't
start with the disagreeing part.
Yeah, which is when you said I don't care how I don't care what they do to transform it. I agree if they have special needs or if they have special desires. But from my perspective, where I'm seeing people succeed is if they give people, like Tom was talking about, that happy, easy path, right? Where you go, I'm going to provide you an easy path. If you want to go do this crazy other thing, this is what it has to be at the end of the day. This is what you have to adhere to from an output standpoint. If you want to go down your own crazy path to do that, okay, but you have to adhere to these kind of rules. But outside of that, I don't care, but I'm going to provide you the happy, easy path. That becomes the thing of, I'm seeing a lot of people go, oh, okay, I can just create rules and tell you what you have to provide to me, but I'm not going to give you that platform to make it easy. And so it becomes that thing, because I agree with you that you have to give people the autonomy to do it. And Paul, like one of the things that in our conversation, I feel like you're kind of warming up your teams to make them understand that they're going to have to do this and that get them ready for the capability, but that you're not kind of doing a speed run of them to get them through this.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an interesting approach, but I'd love to hear what everybody else is kind of thinking from that.
One other thing that I'm planning, but I haven't even built this piece at all, is like an API endpoint that'll basically say, now I have a lot of control because of basically most of the teams, it's a very centralized team right now. Distributing it's going to be a little bit more complicated, but like the repos and everything else. So I'm going to basically create an API endpoint that says, data product create, and that will create the repo with whatever the standard artifacts are. So, if we want to, basically we're setting it on Python as the kind of the standard transformation engine to load data and then transform it. It will create a repo, put in a bunch of code in there that will say, okay, this is how you normally do it, and kind of fill in templates so that get back to that happy path that you were just talking about. It's half written for you, and then you just concentrate on like the actual logic. I want to take A, make it B, A plus B equals C, so on, whatever else transformations.
Well, that's exactly also what we have done in those projects, to generate those repositories with the code, depending, of course, on the choices of which transformation type you want to use. And what you described, Paul, about having the transformation as kind of a black box for whoever writes it, and then have the mesh still know about when it's triggered, when it's done, and to do the orchestration. Well, that's also the view that we're applying on the platform. The only thing I want to say earlier was that you shouldn't only provide the more advanced option with maybe Airflow and Spark and other things, because that might be a big bump up to start using it. But also have the very easy, maybe straightforward option of just running a Python script that does import connections to output, so that there's a choice to go either the simple but limited way or the advanced but a more complex way.
Yeah, the example I often use is you can use your Perl scripts.
Yeah, for example.
But the thing is, you don't, when you're creating when you're creating a data product or a data mesh, you don't have to have a transformation, right? Because sometimes it's just about exposing something. It can be a view on something, or it can be, or it can be data that is being virtualized from another system. So it doesn't have to be a real copy and transformation in that sense.
Yeah, I think I try and get everybody to listen to Mahmoud Yassin's episode of Data Mesh Radio, because exactly what you're talking about of like what they were doing at ABN AMRO is really interesting, because they've been doing data mesh before data mesh. They're really one of the only people I've seen that was actually doing it relatively close to before Zhamak's thing came out. A lot of people were like, oh yeah, we've done this. And it's like, you were just doing decentralized. You didn't do any of the stuff that actually does the cohesion and the kind of coordination and things like that. But you know, the decoupled coordination, which is a very interesting concept. But the idea of, do we need to create this as an actual physical data product? Like, is this accessed enough? Is this computationally intense enough or light enough, or that we should keep this as an actual data product? Or should this be a recipe that when somebody makes a call and they say, I need this, it's just that it automatically gets assembled, right? And this is for like downstream data products and things like that, you know, kind of that combine. But it's a very interesting concept around this, because it's so, it becomes like that question. Like, Tom, I was wondering when you were talking about the Kubernetes thing, like, how do you think about managing costs? Like, that's, I have to drop here in a second because I forgot I had a meeting that somebody threw on my thing at 7 p.m. But I want to drop that as the bomb of like, how do you think about managing costs, and then just kind of drop that bomb and leave, because it comes up a lot with the Kubernetes question of, if everybody has isolated resources, then the costs start to get more. But then as soon as you start to bring all the costs together, you know, JP Morgan Chase talked about, if you have a combined pool of resources and anybody can pull from those resources, then the big domains always starve out the small domains. And so especially banking, like end of month, end of quarter, like the small domains can't ever get their data in on time. So their SLAs are always bad. So then they don't get any investment in their domain because the other domains crowded them out of getting the resources. So I'd love to hear about that, but I'm going to have to listen on the recording. But
isn't that the fact that data mesh is also for platform building a balancing act between centralization and decentralization? How much shared platform and tooling do you want? How much do you want to leave that open for different infrastructures? And yeah, that also has an impact on the total cost of ownership. For the running cost, we do try to use as much as possible auto scaling to optimize for cost. But that's all in the design of the platform for that client, in my point of view.
I think it's a topic we cannot really, you know, like deal in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I think, hey Tom, it was great. It was great talking with you. If you're up for it, what we had in mind with Scott was to do it kind of on a weekly basis. Okay, we can change the time if that's a little late for you, but maybe this is a topic we can bring for next week, is how do we manage costs and things like that. At least one of the topic we can discuss.
Yeah, why not? The time is okay for me.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so well, thanks, Tom.
Yeah,
bye
no
Zoom
problem.
user, and let's meet next week.
Yeah.
Bye guys.
Bye.